And I never saw this coming. Like, I never thought I would write a track like this. Hey guys, what's up? It's Biddy and welcome to my first vlog ever. So every time I meet friends whom I haven't met with in a while, they're always like, what are you up to? What music do you have coming out soon? When's your next show? So I decided that I should try to do a better job of putting all this info out there. Hopefully with these YouTube videos, I can let you guys into my process, into my life, and hopefully that's kind of fun and interesting for you guys to watch. If you have any questions or any suggestions about what I should include in my next videos, please leave it in the comments below. And you know what I have to say? Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. So with all that out of the way, I wanted to talk about this exciting project that I was a part of, where I made a 5-song EP in 5 weeks. So there's this company called Storyblocks, and if you've ever made videos for social media or YouTube before, or even film or TV or advertisement projects, you've probably needed stock music or library music. So they heard my music before and they reached out to me to ask if I was interested to be part of their pilot project where composers and artists make an album of work specifically for them. And they said it could be anything I wanted to make, but they did have in mind my electro, R&B and like future soul type of music. So I said yes, but then a problem came up, which was that I had to change the dates for my honeymoon trip, and it ended up clashing with my timeline to work on this project. So I decided I would challenge myself to write 1 song a week and get this project done before I travel. So that's what I did. So most people are taking a break today. It's a public holiday, but I'm gonna spend the afternoon working on bass and drums for this flute and harp track, which I still haven't named, before I head to Ezra's grandparents' house for dinner. So hopefully I get a lot done. Kind of want to take a nap, but I probably shouldn't, so we'll see how that goes. So Shangri-la was the first song that I wrote for this EP. It starts with a nice, soft, gentle, kind of atmospheric intro that builds into a lush, slightly funky kind of chorus. I guess you could say I wanted it to feel like a warm hug, or like that you're falling through the clouds. So I started off with a flute and a harp. I accompanied it with a Wurlitzer keyboard. I actually hadn't used this sound in a while. I was reminded again that I like it after listening to the Her soundtrack by Arcade Fire, and yeah, it kind of gave it this nice body and warmth there, and I added little shimmers on top of these bubbly sounds using this really interesting trumpet sample. It's called Trumpet Fields. Kind of felt like we were bubbling at the surface before taking a deep dive into a lush underwater world. In the chorus, where I have these full and warm strings filling up the space mostly with a melody that runs through different instruments. So each of them is playing just 2 or 3 notes, and together they all form this long cascading melody. So it kind of feels like you're discovering small, cool new things about a new world and also putting them together to form a bigger picture. And I had this nice airy sound from a synth that I played around with for the first time called Farlight. It works off mostly vocal samples that are processed and warped. So I added in my own vocal sample in there and created it into a synth. I think it'll be cool. Like jazz and hip-hop, they go together really well. Just that I've never done it myself before personally. So we'll see how it goes. I think it'll work. It should work. I hope it works. So the second track is possibly my favorite from this EP. I'd wanted to make music like this for a long while, but I just hadn't. So this was a nice reminder that I don't just write slow and sad stuff. Also because of the bass, or should I say basses? Because first I started off with a Moog line and then I just kept on adding basses. So I played the main bass line on my Moog Lil Fatty. Then I recorded some slap bass for the bridge. Bass recording, let's go! And cut some of those short lines and licks to use as fills in between of the moog bass line in the final chorus. And the last thing was this sub bass that swirls around under the slap bass. Because the slap bass had more emphasis on the higher frequencies, the sub bass kind of gives it the grounding underneath. So this is what it sounds like all put together. And I also have multiple drum layers. First, I had some sort of dancey loop going on throughout the track, except during the breakdown, because I thought, why not try using Break Tweaker for the drums too? I thought it was a good idea to have more than one layer of drums on this. It's actually pretty common. A lot of pop songs have a main beat and extra percussions and loops, beefing up the song as it grows. So that's what I did, and I kind of like how it turned out. Since I was mixing today, I drew all the curtains in the studio just to prevent sound from bouncing off too much off of all the hard surfaces in the studio so that they don't color my perception of what the mix actually sounds like. Radio Retro. Okay, this song was nice for me too, but a little bit more challenging. I'll get to that in a bit. So I wrote this song around one loop that I really liked. Kind of sounds like a whole song that's been sampled. And it had such a nice, warm, kind of vibey, but also like joyful feeling to it. The loop actually did come in with a bass line, but I removed it and added my own with some extra fills so that it didn't seem so loopy. I was definitely hearing an organ on this. It just fits the soulful warmth. And that was fun too. I love pretending that I'm an organist. So the challenging part was writing the horns using several different horn samples of different textures, and I tweaked them in terms of like the playing style, the dynamics, intensity, and I guess the sort of things they could do, so they're not just playing the same way all the time. So yeah, this one wasn't that complicated actually. It's just a few instruments, but it feels nice and warm and full. So I like that about this. And I also really like the very obvious hits and breaks in the song. I know that makes it easier for you to cut your video to. Honestly, I found it a little difficult mixing this much percussion on top of the drums that I already have into a song, but man, experimenting with these clave rhythms and Brazilian percussion was quite fun, so I'm gonna try and do this more next time. Mental note. By this point, I was starting to wonder, yikes, am I still gonna have the inspiration keep going on? Turns out I was quite inspired because my fourth song took a very unexpected turn. I was supposed to be doing this sort of like playful modern R&B thing with some toy-like sounds, and it was based on a chord progression I love but have never used before. I started hearing an idea for Latin rhythms in this song, and I was like, can I make an R&B song with Latin percussion as well as bossa and samba influence? That didn't sound like one of those, cliche like bossa nova breakdowns. So I started my experiment in the bridge by combining strings with a gyro, not sure how to pronounce it, but you probably know what it is. It's this thing. Even if you never knew what it was called, you've definitely heard it before. And I was like, hot damn, it works. So I kept going with that. I added a little bit more percussion and then a bossa nova nylon guitar thing underneath the arpeggios in the intro. And in the final choruses, I used like a modern drum machine beat to recreate traditional Latin rhythms, particularly this one called the clave. Sometimes it's played by a couple of wooden sticks, and people refer to this instrument as a clave as well. I decided that I'm gonna call this fourth song Florescendo, which is Portuguese for blooming. I just think it's a nice homage to the Brazilian influence in this song, as well as on theme with how the song grows from start to finish in so many different ways, instrumentation, intensity. And I think the neat thing also is that it kind of sounds like the words flore, which is Portuguese for flower, and crescendo. Florescendo is like a flower shouting at me, which I guess is kind of apt for this song. I think I may actually have producer's block right now. I'm struggling to think of what to do now that I've laid down this bouncy brass sample. So it's just something really simple. I kind of like it. But I'm not really sure where to go from here. Oh man. So, as surprised as I was to be working on the fourth song with all these unexpected inspirations and influences, I was not prepared for what was going to happen on my fifth song. And I literally, in every sense of the word, correctly used literally, think that this is my weirdest song ever. So like Radio Retro, there was this cool loop that I was into. And I could pretty much hear what would accompany it, or so I thought. So since I had a sort of ethnic thing going on with the past couple of songs, like I imagine Radio Retro to kind of be like a bit African American gospel leaning, and Florescendo to be a very obviously Brazilian leaning. I thought, why not try to do something Asian on this one, Asian soul. I actually called this track Katong Funk at first because I wanted it to include some flavor of where I grew up in Singapore, and it was really inconvenient for me to go there and try to record some samples and turn it into music. And what even is the sound of Singapore music? I mean, that's a debate for a whole nother day. Well, so technically Singapore is a melting pot of Chinese, Malay and Indian cultures. So I thought, okay, why not just start with an erhu, which is like a Chinese violin. These samples are from the amazing cellist and erhu player Tina Guo. But I didn't just want it to be a Chinese track. I actually stumbled upon samples of Pakistani ethnic music, and then I thought to myself, maybe I could create this sort of like Silk Road area region type of soul funk. So I put a whole bunch of these in there. There are like vocals and lots of percussion from like dolaks and shidats and shafaks, and I hope I'm saying that right. YouTube, don't censor me. And some wind instruments. So I manually cut them up. Because if not, there might have been a lot of clashing here and there. And then I decided the music needed some meat. So I played around with this Arturia vocoder. So they added a really nice, unique texture and lush presence, and it was obviously something different because it was synthesized but it was also vocal. I decided to go with the words ek do tin, which is Hindi for 123. India is in the middle of the Silk Road, and I wanted to give a nod to that because I hadn't specifically used any Indian traditional instruments. This was a nice way to get really centered on that Silk Road theme.
This is what a vocoder sounds like. I don't need to sing, I just need to play the notes and it can create chords around what I say. And I just really need to whisper so that it gets the foul sounds.
I quite like how the piece climaxes at the end and has, Pakistani music samples as well as the vocoder with the 123 in Hindi. And it's kind of all nicely melding together and it sounds kind of full and lush. So yeah, thank God I managed to get over that writer's block and finish this song ahead of time, slightly ahead of time so that I could enjoy my honeymoon. Yeah, so that's the 5-track EP that I wrote for Storyblocks. It's completely royalty-free for all media and totally okay for you to use in any of your social media videos, films, ads, whatever. So check it out. I'm going to put a link in the description below. I am writing music for myself too as well. So while waiting for new Biddy music, you can check out these tracks from Storyblocks and also keep listening to my latest EP, Bitty, that's out on Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere that you listen to music. And so that's all for this Storyblocks project. And I can't wait to tell you guys more about the new music and performances that are going on in my life. So that's all, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh my gosh.